Mr. Chairman, our next witness is witness number 195. It appears on page 56 of your file. For security reasons, the witness voice is not, you would not hear the witness voice, but one of the members of the tribunal will repeat the witness's statements. But I will say that in Persian as well. برای اطلاع شما شاهد بعدی با صدای خود شهادت نخواهد داد بلکه صدای یکی از اعضای تریبیونال خواهد بود. Good morning or good afternoon. The chairman will ask you to repeat the oath.
Mr. Witness, can you hear me? Mr. Witness, can you hear me? Mr. Witness, can you hear me?
Mr. Chairman, the witness has some difficulty in unmuting his voice, but let's see whether he can hear you now.
Mr. Witness, can you hear me? So if you can hear me, can you nod your head? Or unmute your computer or phone?
You nod.
Can you speak and confirm you can hear me?
Mr. Chair, he can hear you.
Oh, he can. Okay, thank you. Can you repeat after me, please? I solemnly declare that I will speak the truth.
I solemnly declare to say the truth.
Whole truth and nothing but the truth.
To say the whole truth and to say nothing but the truth.
Thank you. There'll be some questions now from Council, and then that will be followed by some questions from the panel. Thank you.
The witness is a police officer with the rank of major. He commanded a group of 60 police officers and was assigned during the November 2019 to the city of Mariwan. The witness ordered his force not to shoot at the demonstrators. The witness was then prosecuted and sentenced to 5 years imprisonment. The sentence has not yet been carried out. Witness 195, can you please explain to the tribunal the event that you witnessed on Sunday, 17th November in Mariwan?
I would like to express my greetings to the honorable panel, to the prosecutors. On 23rd of Aban, 1398, about 60 people were under my command, and I was dispatched to one of the provinces of Iran. And I was supposed to go and get based in a particular center from 18th to 25th of Aban. From 25th of Aban to 1st of Azar, I was based there. And the peaceful protests started. The forces that were under my command were determined, and we had some plainclothes officers who were also based in the four corners of the governor's office, Sepah Bank, and also the residential complex of Imam. And there was some coordination made with the management of the complex so that the individuals could be placed there for filming and also for putting weapons on the top of the roofs.
Could I just pause? Sorry, Mr. Witness, just pause a second. I'm just a bit concerned, and the panel's a bit concerned that the detail that he's giving may reveal his identity.
Yes. Please make sure that no reference is made to the city or the province that you were assigned to.
کسب تکلیف و دستور تیراندازی
I received an order to shoot from the head of the district. The voice gets cut off all the time, sorry.
کسب تکلیف و دستور تیراندازی
I received an order by the Provincial Security Council. Received an order to shoot from the Provincial Security Council, and the governor, as the head of the Provincial Security Council, issued the order, and also the representative of the province, the head of the prosecutor's office, the commanders of the military forces, including the IRGC, Army, and the police, formed the Provincial Security Council, and that Provincial Security Council issued the order to shoot. Any direct order by the Provincial Security Council concerning using firearms or other weapons are being issued by this council. The peaceful demonstrations by the people were totally peaceful. And I was asked to go and be based in the place of my mission assignment. And I briefed my forces that under every condition, they do not have the right to use firearms. And the number of the forces who I felt who enjoyed greater patience I just provided them with firearms, but at the same time I briefed them not to use those firearms. I verbally briefed them and tried to also calm down the protesters. Unfortunately, no problem occurred. And fortunately, we were able to overcome the protests without any conflict. The protesters who had gathered also cooperated to the utmost to the utmost level with the officers, and they were very polite. And any tension was prevented until at a part of the city we could hear that there were firing heard. We could hear that Kalashnikov was being fired, and there were some other sounds of weapons being fired. Until a number of armed individuals with semi-military clothing and armed started to shoot without any aim and without any purpose, just with the purpose of intimidation, just with the purpose of intimidating the protesters, started to attack them. After a while, some groups were formed. And the people were shouting to the police, "Support us, support us." Until at a certain time, one of the IRGC officers contacted me through walkie-talkie and ordered that we should take our forces to the central boulevard of the city and the gas station. I did not do so because it was not a part of my job. The forces that were under my force should have been patiently preventing the protesters from committing any destruction. And then we saw that some of the plainclothes people who had arms, and also the RGC forces, and some of the people who were wearing the local clothes of that city started to shoot at the people. And this led to increasing tension. And as a result, the protesters were provoked. The suppressing forces, as far as I am aware, included army personnel, the people from the intelligence, IRGC, and also forces from the other organs, mostly state organs, and also military forces who started to fire. And some of them did not have any emblem or any sign. There were some who fired at will, without any purpose or reason. And I may also say that nobody was ever questioned for the type of the weapons that they used. This is why the police force, if they were using any ammunition, at the end, their ammunition should have been written down on the minutes of meeting. And it should have been clarified how many bullets were shot. This is what I'm talking about is on the 27th of Aban. On the 28th of Aban,
the atmosphere was a bit calmer and things calmed down, and there were some scattered gatherings here and there in the city. In each one of them, there were 50 or 60 people, and this is what was reported to us. And nothing special, no special incident was taking place either. Many of the wounded would not even go to the hospitals themselves because of the consequences that could arise for their families later on. On the 27th, the bodies of 15 people were located in the morgue of the hospital. And on the 25th of the month of Esfand, through a ruling that was issued from the magistrate of a city that I'm not going to name, without having received any summons, I was arrested by the security forces, and without any kind of explanation or justification, was taken to the detention center that belonged to the intelligence forces of the Revolutionary Guards, and I spent weeks in solitary confinement. I was subjected to the most serious types of psychological torture. It was not physical, though. And if I can give you one example of the torture to the honorable judges here, for myself, who was in solitary confinement, they had made up a paper, a report from the forensic medicine to the effect that my family, while they were moving to another city, have had an accident, and their bodies are in the morgue now. So this was a forged document that they had made, and they were showing to me. And for this reason, of course, I went on a hunger strike. After many weeks, they gave me the permission to contact them. And just to say a few words to my family. The interrogator had said that this is a security file, and therefore I would not have any access to the file. It means that I had no access to my own case file. After 2 months, it was announced to my family that from among the 5 lawyers who are approved by the judiciary, one person I had to choose on the basis of the list that I had been given. And of course, at the end, in this mock trial that was held in the branch 4 of the city that I was, which was a military court without the presence of a prosecutor or a jury. I was tried only for 10 minutes, and then I was immediately condemned to 5 years in prison and a separate 10 months of prison term. Taking into consideration that their verdict is considered definite, final, I will not have any right for any appeals. I did object to this in the Supreme Court, and once again, they also approved the verdict that had been issued for me. So this was all my story. This was all that I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. Can you tell the tribunal whether you witnessed whether Revolutionary Guards snipers were at the top of government buildings and other high buildings and shooting at the demonstrators?
بله من
Yes, I saw them. I saw that they shot people, but they were just targeting anybody. There was no rhyme or reason to it.
Can you explain to the tribunal how the Revolutionary Guards reacted to the peaceful protest of the demonstrators?
به صورت لحظه‌ای من
People had gathered on the streets peacefully, and they were by paramilitary forces and a number of military people who were plainclothes military people were arbitrarily shot, and they intimidated them.
Thank you. The tribunal will have some questions for you now.
Justice Yakub.
Thank you. Please don't answer any questions that will reveal your more about you than has already been done. I am interested in what you know of police practices. Now, please don't confine them to the area in which you were. I want to talk generally about what you know of police practices. No names, no details or anything, because I'm afraid you may be identified. Now, they are all.
The practice of the police force when there are protests or gatherings is that there are forces to control gatherings. And they have what we call cold arms, that's to say truncheons, they have shields, and they also have a special clothing in order to be able to control the crowds.
Yes,
that's to say that they come in groups, but come in different groups. And when you have 4 groups, they have one commander, and each group has 9 members. and these 9 individuals act according to the instructions of the commander. And when there are peaceful protests, they come first and encounter them, they talk to them, and through a loudspeaker, they warn people, and then that's how they do it to the extent possible. And then ultimately, if the gathering starts, that's to say, if the protesters start destroying something, then they come and they use their truncheons on them. And they try to scatter the protesters that are allowed to take that action. And if using the truncheon does not work, then they will have different deployments that they call Paykan deployment, lozenge deployment, etc. All they want to do is to intimidate the crowds. That's to say, there are a number of military maneuvers that they take in order to intimidate the crowds. If it doesn't come to any kind of a conclusion, as I said, they use the truncheons, they use the tear gas. And so these are the control forces, and they use 2 kinds of weapons, that's to say the truncheons and also the equipment that personally protects them, plus the tear gas that is at the disposal of these groups. That's to say, there's 1 person in each group that has the equipment in order to project and throw the tear gas. So when the problem is not solved through them, that's to say, when a decision is reached, then you will have the IRGC forces, and they will have the other paramilitary or the militia forces. Then you have the forces from other organs who are armed with weapons, they are prepared and ready to act very quickly, to be present in the location and to crack down the protests. So that's the next stage.
Now, I understand that all that you say should happen, because that is the usual procedure, and that's what the procedure should be. Now, what I want to ask you is, to your knowledge, do people in the police force always follow the procedure?
متوجه نشدم.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Okay, let me put it a bit more simply. The rules that you described just now are what police people should do if they act properly and according to what they are told to do. Now, do you have knowledge of people in the police force who don't obey the rules and who do things outside the rules?
همچین چیزایی هم پیش میاد.
Yes, these things happen. Unfortunately, it has always been so. In the Iranian police force, taking into consideration depending on the psychology of the person who is in charge, that could happen. It is possible that there is a member of the police force who has all kinds of constraints, physical, psychological, financial, and it is possible that willingly does something instead of calling him sick and say that I cannot go and act. If he does that, then he will be prosecuted in courts. In Iran, there is no organization that takes care of the psychological aspects of the members of the police force. When you send somebody to act under such circumstances, what the psychology of the person is and how he might react. That's it. There is no such care for them.
Apart from those policemen who have psychological problems, with whom I have considerable sympathy, are there senior people in the police force who carry out instructions that they are given from higher authority, even if it means acting unlawfully, they carry it out without question?
Even if it is unlawful, they do it. That's to say that the commander comes and gives an order and says this is something that has to be done. If it is done, it's done. That's to say, if it is not, then it will be a hanging noose on the neck of the person who did not do it, not the commander. Even if it is against the laws and regulations, and even if there is somebody who objects to this person, to this agent, the police force, that's to say those in charge who are seniors and who are the higher ups, they are not going to protect the lower one. That's to say everybody just wants to take care of their own affairs, take care of their own interests.
Now, if there was evidence that there were instructions from above during the protests in November, which said that the protests must be stopped at all costs, regardless, and that police people must shoot to kill and not use the normal processes. That came as a general instruction. Do you know anything about an instruction like that, a general one which came from really high up?
What do you mean at the highest level? At the decision-making level of the police force, IRGC, and the army, and the intelligence forces, you mean? When the order of the Provincial Security Council is issued on using firearms, then the firearms are being used without questioning it. And nobody thinks of its repercussions, and nobody will face any consequences, any repercussions after.
Is that practiced within the police force during times of protest, like in November?
The police force is comprised of teams. We've got special units, and these special units do not use firearms. But there are some other forces in the police force, intelligence-related police officers. They wear plain clothes. Sometimes they could have any form of clothes, and then they start shooting. They may do anything, but they would not be identified. But the population control unit, the special unit, the relief unit, and also the security unit, units of the police, which have police uniform, have emblems. They are being seen, and I've never seen them to commit such acts.
One last question. I read in a book somewhere that police sometimes make fires in big institutions because they want to blame the public for those fires. And that's why they go quietly in plain clothes and wear them. I don't know whether it's just a story or what, but can that happen in your experience?
همچنین
It has happened several times. I've seen it myself. There were protests that could have been controlled. There were no problems. The protests were completely peaceful. No destruction had taken place. And no problem had occurred anywhere. But unfortunately, for example, someone started to destroy public property with a free will and started to put fire on buildings, on people's cars, and they tried to cause tension, and as a result, a protest that could have been controlled without any problem then becomes out of control.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I thought these writers of novels always talk lies, but thank you very much for your help. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I just have several points of clarification. You did mention that there was an order to shoot which was issued by the Provincial Security Council. Are you able to give any more details about this order? Was it an order to shoot in the air, to shoot people in the leg, to shoot to kill? Was there any specificity with respect to this order?
The order to shoot means to shoot. That is to say, they are trying to somehow acquit themselves. They say that observing the rules of using weapons, the rules of observing weapons against the protests that lead to destruction of property cannot be really implemented. What does that mean, the rule observing the legal boundary of using weapons? If that is to be observed, you have to say stop, stop, stop 3 times, and then you have to shoot in the air once, and then you have to shoot in the legs below the waist. But this is not what is happening in the protests. They issue such orders, and the order that is being issued by the Provincial Security Council is to use the weapons observing the rules of using firearms. And after that, they wouldn't care what happens and under what conditions the officer has shot, whether the individual observed the law or the rules or not. In other words, I should say that some of these soldiers and police personnel don't know how to use weapons. They have never had any practice, any training. They are just being given some weapon and to go and suppress the people. The only thing that they can do at that moment is to pull the trigger. They don't know where they shoot at.
Thank you.
It's not important for them where they shoot.
Thank you. And in respect of this order to shoot, when it became clear that the shooting was resulting in deaths. So in other words, the rules regarding use of firearms was not being complied with. Was there any subsequent order or clarification coming from the Provincial Security Council after the initial order?
مطلقا
No, not at all.
Thank you. And
اونا دستور
The order that they issued they don't pursue their order afterwards. It's not important for them what happens afterwards anyway.
thank you. And are you, you may not be aware of this, but are you aware whether other provincial security councils gave the same order at the same time?
شورای تامین
The Provincial Security Council make their own decisions.
Are you,
The Provincial Security Council decides, and after a telephone call, they coordinate the issue with the province. They say such a thing has happened, and this is the decision that has been made. And then there would be no written correspondence. They won't wait for any written response. It's just a telephone call. That's it.
thank you. And in your written evidence, we have been led to understand that you were redeployed on the 14th of November in anticipation of potential problems. Can you indicate what problems were anticipated already on the 14th of November?
متوجه سوال نه
I could not really understand your question. I don't know exactly what 14th of November is in the Iranian calendar.
Is council able to assist with that?
14th of November would be Thursday, 24th of Aban, or 23rd of Aban, yes.
Perhaps just to clarify my question, my understanding is that the announcement of the fuel.
What do you mean by 23rd of Aban,
Yes.
Thursday?
Yes, I think so.
So my understanding is that the announcement about the fuel increases only came a day later. So my question is, what was being anticipated and what was the reason for your deployment?
دلیل
The reason was that the rumors among the people had heard some rumors that the petrol prices would go up. The petrol stations had become so crowded on Wednesday and on Thursday, and people were trying to store petrol using tanks. Even though it hadn't been announced that the petrol prices would increase. How did people understand that the prices would increase? Why were they trying to store petrol in the jerry tanks and other ways? Somehow they had heard about it. Somehow they anticipated that this would happen.
Thank you.
You refer several times to military or police forces being in plain clothes. Can you explain how, or just clarify how you can identify them as army or police forces if they are in plain clothes? How can you distinguish them from the protesters?
اینها به دلیل اون
There are some particular areas, and every area have got their own local clothing, local way of garments, and they usually have hockey clothes, and they usually wear the clothes that are worn in the area. So plain clothes or semi-military clothes, when we talk about, it means that they have their own shoes, but the trousers is a military trousers. They don't have any emblem. They don't have any hat, helmet. These are semi-military. These are militia. It is clear how they wear their clothes. From the color of their clothes, we could know to where they belong. For example, the special forces wear black clothes. The relief forces, they wear green clothes, olive green. The RGC forces, they wear special clothes, which is a combination of green and cream.
No, I understand that there are people wearing uniformed clothes and that those are easily identifiable. But if I'm not mistaken, you did reference that there would be paramilitary forces and then others wearing plain clothes, and they're the ones that shot and intimidated the protesters. And so I'm interested in understanding a little bit more about how the plain clothed officers or paramilitaries were identified as such, as opposed to protesters, as opposed to being protesters.
When the plainclothes people have weapons, hold weapons, and they've got a walkie-talkie, and they have cartridges on their clothes, you would know that they are not private individuals. But when they have walkie-talkies, when they have a commander, when they come in a group and in teams, so you know to where they belong. They don't just come in groups of one or two. If there are armed groups in a popular group, there would be one or two people who are armed. But we see that there are 20 people suddenly appearing in the population, all of them wearing similar clothes, all of them have cartridges on, they have covered their faces, and they all have weapons in hands, they have walkie-talkies, so you would realize that they do not belong to the people.
Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may intervene at this stage, and I've been asked to answer the concern that has been shown over the social media with the identity of the witness and his safety, just to declare that he's in a safe place, and the reason that his face is covered is not to identify him in the public places.
Thank you, Counsel. Can I ask a few questions? And I'm sorry to go back to the order from the Provincial Security Council. I just don't quite follow exactly how you understood the order on the 16th. In your statement, you say that the Security Council had clearly told us, and I'm quoting, quote, "The Security Council had clearly told us that the use of firearms was permitted." And then you say they issued no orders for us on the 16th of November. Do you recall saying that in your statement?
Yes, I remember when the gathering happened, when the gathering started and the protests started. the area that was under my control, nothing happened in that area. It is true that we received an order to shoot. But this does not mean that I should just shoot because I have received an order. There were no problems around me. Why should I have started shoot?
Sorry to interrupt. I want to just try to focus in on this issue. Did you, at any time on the 16th or 17th, receive an order from the Provincial Security Council to shoot protesters?
On the 27th of Aban, there was an explicit order through the walkie-talkie. They are not going to give you a written order. They are going to announce it through the walkie-talkie. And the announcers...
Okay, what was the order, as best you remember receiving it, without revealing your identity? What was the wording of the order you received through the walkie-talkie?
The order that they issued was that the use of firearms is permitted.
But you're a police officer. You, I presume, had a firearm, and under certain circumstances, firearms were always permitted. Am I correct?
It depends. I am, if I'm a police officer and I see somebody is trying to kill somebody else, yes. But in such a case, I am duty bound to use it. And of course, I still have to observe a number of rules. For example...
Okay. So you've got to use, you can use firearms, you've got to observe certain rules. So what I'm trying to understand is, if you receive an order which simply says firearms are permitted, how do you understand that, since you already know that they're permitted under certain circumstances? How did you understand that order at the time you received it?
That when the order comes to me, when I am supposed to protect a particular place, I have to do whatever is in my capability. And if none of that works at the very end, then I use the firearm. And even then, I have to shoot in the air. Ultimately, I mean, that's the last recourse.
Sorry. I just really want you to focus in on the question. I'm trying to understand what you understood that order to mean. You as a police officer, as you've testified, you understood that you were, in ordinary circumstances, allowed to use your firearm subject to certain rules, correct? Right.
Yes, that's correct.
So when you receive an order from the Provincial Security Council telling you that firearms are permitted to be used during the protest, how do you understand that order? Since on the face of it, it's just telling you what you already know. Do you understand my query?
Yes. It's due to the fact that it says in any way possible you have to crack down on the protests. You have to finish it off. It has to finish.
That's what I was trying to understand, how you'd understood it. So you understood that order to mean that you should crack down on the protesters and end the protest by any means, or how did you understand you were supposed to?
By any means possible, it has to finish.
And in terms of shooting protesters, how did you understand the order related to that specifically? What did you understand the order now allowed you to do?
To be
When via the walkie-talkie you are informed, that's to say when the person in charge announces to you, it goes through a code. Every commander has a code, and they come and take a quotation from that code. And you also have to announce your situation. When they announce it to you, you have to say, yes, I am such and such a person. And once they identify you, then they announce the order to you, and once they do it, then you have to confirm that you have received the order. And the person who is issuing the order is somebody who is a commander. He is in the communication center, and then there's an office which also registers it and says such and such an order was given to such and such a person. The situation was announced. The person said that he got the message, got the order. That's the extent of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Witness. Just one other quick area concerning your arrest and subsequent conviction. Without revealing your identity, how did you understand the general charge? What is it that you'd failed to do, according to those who were charging you?
On the 25th of Sfand, I went to work at 9 o'clock in the morning. And the security forces came to me and, for example, they took the telephone handset away from me and they said...
So, sorry to interrupt. I just want to understand what it is you were alleged to have failed to do. How did you understand it? What was said to you? What was your failure?
Cooperation and coordination with protesters, with rioters, and non-compliance with the order that was given to me by a Revolutionary Guards officer. The order that had been given to me by a Revolutionary Guard, I should have complied with it. They were not in my hierarchy. They were themselves settled in a place, in a gas station which was set on fire, etc. I don't know. I don't know what had happened thereafter, but to help them, they announced it to me via the walkie-talkie that immediately I had to go such a particular location where the gas station had burned down. What was I to do? To help with what?
So, just so I understand, the order from the Revolutionary Guard, this is the same order from the Provincial Security Council? The order you've just referred to as not following?
No.
The order that comes from the Provincial Security Council to the effect that you are permitted to use firearms when there are protests, that's one. but they had also divided the surface of the city to different areas. The area that they had given to me, well, no problems arose there. That,
What was the order from the Revolutionary Council that you'd failed to follow, according to the charge?
the order that I did not follow up and did not comply with was the order issued by a person, by an individual, who could have been lower in rank than I was. I am not supposed to comply with his order.
Sorry, Mr. Witness, I just want to understand what the order was. What was the order given? I'm not so interested at the moment in who gave it to you and whether he was entitled to give it to you. I just want to know what the order was.
3 minutes.
The order, it was that within 10 minutes you have to go on foot to such and such a place. Leave your area of command and go to such and such a place. To go to that place where a gas station had been set to fire. And to join a trend that they themselves had not been able to control. That's to say, they had not been able to control for the gas station not to be set on fire.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Witness. I've got nothing further. That's all the questions, I think, from the panel. And over to you, Mr. Sabi. Do you have anything arising?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No further questions, and in fact, we have to vacate this room in the next 2 minutes. So.
Mr. Witness, thank you very much for your testimony. We appreciate it. We understand how difficult it is to testify about these issues, and we really will study your evidence with real care. Thank you very much.